asked this question, and he kind of asked the question, and the answer's really already in the question. But just to make sure that you understand why the answer is in the question and why he's already answered the question with verse number 2, preceding verse number 3, he continues on after that. But the question is, what advantage does man have in all his work which he does under the sun? And it's a rhetorical question. Man has no advantage in what he does under the sun. And two things that I would really like to look at in this verse, beginning with that he has no advantage in his own work. The first part of the verse is, what advantage does man have in his work? Pointing out the word his. It's his own work, what he has done. And as men who are, as people who are Christians and who are studying the Bible, we can see that I can gain little from my own work. Little to nothing from my own work. Now, I'm not speaking from a physical standpoint. I'm speaking from a quality of life standpoint. I'm speaking from a quality of spiritual life standpoint. From your own work, you can gain wealth, you can gain knowledge, you can gain so many different things. But we see so many people that have an abundance of all of these things that are still lost in themselves and in their lives. Secondly, from this verse, I'd like to point out which he does under the sun. Until reading this several times, I really never kind of picked up on this, but he says, what advantage does he have in his own work which he does under the sun? And that would give an earthly theme to what he's asking. He says, what man does on this earth, what can be an advantage to him about it? If you look at John chapter 6 and verse 28 and 29, we see works that are not really under the sun. They're works of God. In John 6, 28 and 29, we see a difference made here. We know that God lives in heaven. He is holy. He is above this earth. John chapter 6, beginning verse 28, therefore they said to him, what shall we do? And they're speaking to Jesus. What shall we do that we may work the works of God? Jesus answered and said to them, this is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent. So the answer is given there. What works are those works that are works of God, that are not of this earth, that are not under the sun? Although we may do them here on this earth, they're really above the earth. It's a spiritual work. And that work is dictated in verse 29 of chapter 6 there. This is the work of God. You believe in him whom he has sent. So Christ there pointing to himself saying, believe on me and you will be doing the works of the Father. Because he who believes in Christ, he who believes that he is the Son of God and believes that he is the Messiah, is not going to discount the commands that he has given in the New Testament. So what advantage does man have in his work? He has no advantage in his own work. He has no advantage in the works that are physical, that are of this earth. And so, as I've already said, Solomon really begins with the answer, but he makes his point using his logic from his wisdom from a very physical from a very physical standpoint that people can possibly understand. So, we will move on to verses 3 through 8 of chapter 1. Verses 4 through 8. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Also, the sun rises and the sun sets and hastens to its place. It rises there again. Blowing toward the south, then turning toward the north, the wind continues swirling along, and on its circular courses, the wind returns. All the rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers flow, there they flow again. All things are wearisome. Man is not able to tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. Here we see, as I have here, the circles of life. And I really wish I would have drawn a circle around all of these things. A circle is something that does not end. The tail is connected to the head. And if you follow that path around, it will continue to go and go into infinity. You can never stop it. And so here Solomon uses cycles that people would be familiar with. Many times we see in the Old Testament they measure things by generations, so many generations. You cannot necessarily put amount of years on that, but generations would be father to son, and then to his son, and to his son as it continues along. And Solomon points out that the generations continue to come. Since the days of Adam, the generations have passed and passed and passed, and they will continue to pass as long as people are having children. As long as God allows this to happen on this earth, people will continue to make generation after generation. But although these generations continue and continue and continue, the earth does not end. It's still there. And we'll see Solomon in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. He is a poetic writer. He will use these definite terms to make his point. The earth remains forever. You will come and you will go, but it's going to continue to be. And he uses this to set up his upcoming points, that the earth is going to continue to turn. The earth is going to continue to be. And the generations will come, the generations will pass. There's life, there's death that continues on there. But the earth is standing. And it's kind of an idea that even though we're coming onto this earth, when we leave here, it's going to be basically the same as it was before. It's going to continue to remain there. So he uses that to begin. He points specifically to the life of people. Secondly, in verse 5, we have the sun. The sun rises in the morning. And we get up this morning, most of us probably didn't see the sunrise, but I guarantee you it came up over the tops of the trees just as it does every single morning. And then tonight it will set again as it has in the previous days. Maybe not at the exact same time, but the sun will continue to rise and continue to set as it has. And so Solomon again points out this cycle of the earth. The days will continue. And if you look at the generations, and that was a broader time period, a longer time period. Now you come down to a shorter time period. Maybe I can look better into my own life when I say day after day after day. I can see in my own life how the days come and the days go, but they continue to come in the same way as they have. And I know that at times I have, in my life, when I wake up the next day and it's kind of the same thing again, I wake up, I got to go to work again, or I got to go to class again. I don't want to get up out of the bed. I'm going to have to study calculus again, or do homework again, and it just kind of becomes a routine. And the sun sets and the sun rises, and when you wake up in the morning, it's kind of the same thing. And Solomon uses this because most of the people at this time period would have had a job where they continually did the same thing each and every day. Probably had less rest than we did. But the sun would rise, and the rising of the sun would symbolize the coming day. In the end of that verse, something that is kind of funny to me, it says, and it hastens to its place to rise there again. It's almost like the sun can't get there fast enough to come back up so you can start your day again. So you can do the same thing again. And what we're not seeing here, maybe a little behind the scenes, is that Solomon's pointing out that the sun rises and the sun sets, and it's a continuous cycle. If the cycle that you have is based on the things of this earth. Every day if I wake up and say, I got to brush my teeth, I got to get in the shower, I got to get out of the shower, I got to get dressed, I got to go to work. At this time I take my lunch break. I will continue on to the end of the day, and then I'll go to sleep, and then I'll get up and do it again the next day. If my entire life is based on that, if my entire life is based on that cycle that I keep, then I will be miserable for the rest of my life. And the reason is because I have no advantage in my own work that I do on this earth. I have no advantage on the things that I do under the sun. So he continues with the cycles. In verse 6, the wind continues on its cycles. It moves in one direction, and it goes up, and then it comes to the south, and then it starts again. It flows there again. Some of this you might look at and realize, hey, Solomon was pretty intelligent. We don't think of this time as having great scholars and knowledge and wisdom of sun and wind, and as we get down to the next one, we'll see the rivers flowing. It's a very theoretical thought process to say the rivers flow into the sea. All the rivers flow into the sea. There's no reversal there.